December 14, 2020 is over. So stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you remain standing, please, and pray with me? Got my phone on first, and I was that one before. Okay, now good. Pray with me, please. Lord God, we just thank you for Wilson Chapel. We thank you for giving us this day today, Wilson Chapel, Lord. And I pray that in the matters that we discussed tonight regarding Wilson Chapel, that they do, we do so in a way that will only honor you. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen.
So, I see one person has signed up to comment for the CDP telecommunications tower, but is anyone here for the general public comment this year? Okay.
I don't know. I'd like to hear what the discussion is, I guess.
Okay, so at the beginning of our meeting, we allow somebody to talk for 3 minutes about whatever.
Okay.
But for CUP, we'll have a specific time of public comment. Councilwoman Lori Bailey couldn't be here tonight. She's self-quarantining for the holidays, so we will miss her. She did, however, send in a lot of input to me and Vaughn prior to the meeting, so she will be represented that way. But I will entertain any additions, deletions, or adoption, or additions or deletions to tonight's agenda. Have a motion to adopt it?
So motion?
I'll second.
Have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to accept the consent agenda as stated.
I'll second it. All in favor? Cheryl, I'll leave it to you.
Ooh, that was fast. Okay. You have the November balance sheet in budget report. And at this point in the year, we are deeply in the red at minus $239,000. But taxes are starting to come in. We received $8,877 so far in November. Our sales and use tax is coming in decently. If it stays at this rate, it would be over budget. We did get in some, no, I'm sorry, we didn't, not in November. We had to give our final report in the CARES grant, and we spent all the money. As you can see under the expenditures, we spent our full allotment. And I don't think we have anything too outstanding here. We did pay for the benches and the notice board. We're done with that. We still have not finished paying for the playground. I guess that's all.
And just so y'all know, we're holding on to that final payment until a couple outstanding items are taken care of. So hopefully that'll be soon. John's working on it. Anything else?
No, that's all.
Any questions for our finance officer? Okay. All right, that brings us to the planning board and our plan. John?
Good evening. Today I'm going to talk about our last meeting in November. We were fortunate to have both Amanda and Mike Como in our meeting, so thank you guys for showing up. It was a great way to start the meeting. We talked about, one of the things Amanda talked about us was the Western Union Municipal Alliance proposal for Sphere of Influence. So, lots of good discussion on that. I know there was some feedback from some of the planning board members. So please keep us in the loop on how that's going to turn out. I know there's some history, etc. So please keep us up to date and maybe either for a meeting or for emails or show up to the planning board meetings and give us some updates, because I think there's a lot of interest in that from us. The other thing we talked about, we had a CUP, Hoy Farm Conservation Subdivision. So it's interesting, I don't think it's an actual application, more as just more of an introduction and trying to get some feedback from us. Do I have that right, Paul?
It was the public information.
I'm sorry, public information, thank you. So we had some good discussion. I don't think I go too much into it, being a CUP. But what we understand is when we do see the official application come through, maybe in January, perhaps?
Yeah, it's just got scheduled for January.
Okay, great.
Just a second ago, I just sent it.
Oh, very good. Then we have a list of questions, and of course we welcome anybody in the public to show up or give us some information as well, so we can ask the applicant on the Hoy Farm Conservation Subdivision, which, if I understand correctly, is the first subdivision application that's requesting conservation. So that's,
I think so.
yeah, that's exciting. The other thing we talked about was we looked at on your initial draft of the 160D legislation. So he handed us a big, large packet of a lot of text change. That was more of just an introduction again for us to get home, do some light reading, and come back January, February timeframe for more in-depth review. Thank you. And last, we had quite a substantial discussion about requests for new regulations for commercial vehicle parking in residential areas, what seemed to be more specifically in homeowner association or in subdivision areas. So there's a lot of back and forth trying to understand what the problem is, trying to understand what the solution being presented really means. Essentially what came out of that was for me to come to you guys and ask, is this something we want to continue to spend more time on? Or do you guys have questions that maybe we get together? How do we proceed? We have someone saying, write a new ordinance, please, that does not allow commercial vehicles in residential areas. So if someone has an 18-wheeler cab, someone has a military truck, kind of a weight, a weight limit, don't allow those in subdivisions. Of course, we see those all over Wesley Chapel in non-subdivision residential areas. So I don't think that's what's being asked for here. But how do we move forward, and do we continue spending hours looking into this?
I would think that would be a homeowners association issue, not something that we can dictate.
Well, what was being requested was a lot of what's being presented is a lot of other municipalities have this ordinance, and it's specifically for those subdivisions that don't have ordinances or don't have enforcement options.
I don't know if we have enforcement options.
I know
I don't want to be
other.
running around looking for cars and driveways that are, ABC plumbing. That's considered a commercial vehicle, but if I see it, who's going to enforce that?
Right, and that was some of the things that started getting brought up. Was how do we have? We just. That's one of the things we discussed, right? We just removed an ordinance because we don't have really the power to go in. It was for the flooding, right? And we do something that causes flooding. Now we have to pay for an engineer to come in just to start writing tickets for that. So is this something else that we want to take on now as another ordinance? But it came to us with more than one person interested, and of course that's something we're constantly asking for, the public to come to us and tell us what do you need from us. And here is someone coming saying this is what we need. So I want to give it all the attention that we can. Looking for some guidance here.
Personally, I see a lot of variances in our neighborhoods. We have some very white-collar neighborhoods, we have some very blue-collar neighborhoods. You want to write an ordinance that covers all of Wesley Chapel. I don't see us doing that specifically. And I'm thinking that in the more affluent white-collar neighborhoods, I think they would have a homeowners association that would be more responsible for that, in my opinion. I don't know how it is.
I agree with you. And to your point, we don't have staff to monitor that, and we don't have a way to enforce it. So I don't see why we would need to spend more time looking into it.
It was, I think primarily it was brought up by, Bruce Sherry,
Heather Glenn.
Heather Glenn, they don't want an HOA. That's the only incident I've heard of a problem. Have you heard of another one?
That's not what I've heard. That's the only one that's been brought to planning board. I don't know if any's come to the
Were
office.
there any other complaints or?
There's one.
There was one.
Recurring one.
By Stonegate?
Cheryl's been doing. The issue, one issue that we have is that there's a very kind of unclear provision in the zoning ordinance right now dealing with this matter. And the way it's written, it basically purports to only regulate the parking of unusual or extremely large commercial vehicles by persons that have a home occupation, right? Whereas the problems that we're dealing with are not necessarily related to a home occupation. It's, you know, the guy that drives home the big truck from work, but he just uses it to, because he works for somebody else and he goes off and does the business and he comes back home. And some places that's fine, some places that's not fine, or the neighbors might not like it as much. And so I think Cheryl probably gets occasional calls about such things. But I don't know.
It's really just been those two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an overwhelming problem. It's just some people see that in the ordinance and then try and assign that particular regulation having to do with home occupations to commercial vehicles in general and say, why aren't we doing anything with it? Which I can explain all day why we're not doing anything with it. But there was at least some intent by a council in a previous time to have some regulation of commercial-ish vehicles in residential areas. But the way it was written, it really only applied to home occupation. So, whatever the council's pleasure is, we'll be happy to move forward in that direction. But yes, enforcing, no matter who you are, enforcing something like that can be.
So the question is, do we want John and his crew to spend time working on something that we're not even going to consider, or do we just tell them, don't waste his time?
If the council's not going to consider it, it's probably not worth spending a lot of time on.
Exactly what I'm asking, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because this is, I don't know if that would that be a zoning ordinance? I mean, it's
It would
not like a
probably-
subdivision
because-
development ordinance.
Because of the way that we would have to enforce it, most likely, because it would be different in different areas. Because we would not want to restrict somebody that has 3 or 4 acres of land that just happen to be zoned R40, and they got trucker, big truck or something like that. Nobody's going to ever see, and there's no point in purporting to regulate that. Whereas if you're 30 feet from your neighbor's garage and you're starting up a gigantic diesel engine at 5 a.m. every morning, then it's a little bit different story. So we would probably have to be by zoning district with a lot of other qualifiers assigned to it. So it would probably necessarily be a zoning ordinance. But
So I guess it would fall under planning board then. If that case. It's not like
yeah, it would, I think including it in zoning ordinance. We talked about having it be potentially a general police power, which I think the general application or something like that, but it would be difficult to be equitable.
Sometimes HOAs can be taken by, and then sometimes they can protect you from stuff like this. So it's kind of a
The particular problem that was brought to the planning board, I think that the individuals that live in that neighborhood, if there is something in their HOA bylaws having to do with that, they can probably take some personal action against that property owner. I think probably nobody wants to be that person on their own.
I don't want to be that person either.
Right. It's tough. You don't want to be that guy.
And what's interesting as well is, I pause because what's being presented is saying, let's have an ordinance specific for subdivisions. It's not a development ordinance. It's saying living in your property in the subdivision, West Chapel, live in a subdivision, you have to follow this ordinance. If you don't live in a subdivision, you don't have to. As far as I know, I don't think we have any ordinances like that,
No.
right? To segregate people who live in a subdivision. So I paused because I saw that not bringing West Chapel together. It's kind of sectioning out subdivisions. So, and I didn't see it. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. I think we all agree it doesn't apply to. It shouldn't be there for a lot of people, like I said, with larger lots in West Chapel. So, if we spend time on this, we got a lot of details like that to look into, right? How do you create an ordinance specific for subdivisions? We've never done that before.
Personally, John, I don't see wasting the time on it.
Okay.
That's just my 2 cents.
I agree.
Anything, John?
All right. Well, that's thank you. That was the guidance we were looking for. So we'll communicate that, and if you guys are okay, what I'll do is I'll address the people who brought this to us and said, if you have any other further questions, please come to council and talk with you guys directly.
See if they can get their neighborhood to form an HOA.
Right. There's a lot of solutions. Go talk to the person, which hasn't been done as far as you know. There's a lot of other solutions, but I wanted to give this the full attention it deserves coming from the public in Wesley Chapel. So, thank you. That is all I had from last month. Of course, we're off this month. So, anything else?
Does that mean we'll still see you in January?
Probably not. No, we don't have another meeting until after council. So unless you need me, email me if you need me to show up for anything. Actually, depending on what's on the agenda, I might show up. If it's something that we've sent you guys from planning board, I may show up in January.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
One question, John. John, did you guys look at the 160D legislation ordinance amendments last month?
We were presented them, and it was, like I said, a huge, thick packet of multiple text changes. So what I think Vaughn presented us was just, here's what it's going to look like. Take it home. We didn't even discuss it. It was
So
just
as far as digging into it, you guys didn't discuss any particulars. It's just
correct.
Giving you time for review.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was good because I think it's going to be a good hour or two discussion. Maybe. Yeah.
And when will we be seeing that?
You can go ahead and start looking at it if you like. I can send it to you. I'm sure I'll send it to you. And there's not going to be a whole lot that changes necessarily from what we presented, because most of it's just you have to do this. So we can go ahead and give it to you if you want to start looking at it. Because the formality, part of this is just making sure the planning board understands everything and that you understand everything. But we'll be going through everything with the planning board in the coming months, and they will make a recommendation to you just like any other text amendments.
I know some of this is state mandated changes. Will it be divided up into, here's the things you have to do, here's the things you have the option on?
There are some things that there is some discretion involved in some things, and so we'll work with the planning board to come to the correct course of action.
Okay.
And what planning board has now, is that a phase or is that total?
It's the complete.
It's total.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how are you guys planning on tackling that? John? Or you want to review the whole enchilada before it comes to us, or are you going to phase it to us?
I would think we'd be going July, right?
I think we're doing everything one time.
Okay.
Is there a deadline on this?
June 30th.
June 30th, okay. So we're at least being a little bit proactive.
Yeah, we only had a couple of years.
Usually for us, it's due next month, it's due next week, it's due tomorrow.
We're still up a little bit ahead of the curve. There are some folks that are they're calling us to get started.
Well, let me ask you on that. So, do we have till June 30th to adopt it, or till June 30th to adopt? So, to make that happen, is there public meetings? Is there notices?
Public hearings. The council will have a public hearing on each of the various sets of ordinances, because there's amendments to each of the ordinances. But they will, I would imagine, we'll just do all of that in one evening. There should not be anything so controversial that members of the public want to come and engage particularly much on it.
And how much of that can be changed after the fact if we need to massage it after the adoption.
You can change it, just like anything else, you can amend the ordinance in the same manner that you do right now.
I just have flashbacks to the tree ordinance. We know it wasn't perfect,
Sure.
but at the same time, we can change it if we have to, if we didn't foresee any particular issue.
A significant number of things on that list, for instance, are just changing references in the statute. So that'll take 5 minutes for us to go to a planning board, and those would be completely non-controversial. Some other, there's things like changing definitions in your ordinances to align with what's in statute and things like that. And so it's a change, but there's no discretion involved. And there's just hundreds of little changes, really.
All right, well, thank you, John, for your do you have anything to say before I talk about the survey?
Just other things going on that noted in the reports for the Cavison subdivision, the final plat, we're almost there with the engineer and the developer. I think we're just waiting on getting the actual bonds themselves from their guarantor. But besides that, they've been working with Bonnie and I for the last few weeks, and we've gotten, I think, everything else aligned with the checklist for the final plat. And the Carolina Pets, which is back there behind 201, they submitted their site plan. We got comments back to them, I think, last week. I've not heard back from them, but I think they'll probably break ground sometime in the late winter, early spring, assuming all goes well.
And I have asked Vaughn what benchmark would charge us to do an analysis to compile, analyze, and present the survey we did in residence. So I am asking council to approve $5,000 and to move that money into benchmark services to get that process started and finished. We will be able to include it in our comp plan, and hopefully in January, Vaughn will talk to us about our comp plan and moving forward.
And just a note on the survey, assuming you want to go forward with that, if there are any specific questions that the council has, I know the survey is chock full of questions, but if there's anything in particular you're wanting to know coming out of the survey, how do people think about this particularly? Something that we may not understand from, because the number of responses is so high, it's 741. If there's any, since you want to use it for your budgeting purposes, if there's something in particular you're interested in that might not have been an obvious answer that came out of something, we'll use text analysis to identify common words and things of that nature. But if there's something you're looking for, please let me know so we can take to it to identify anything like that. And I think I did tell you that I think we do have the capability to exclude any responses from outside of the corporate limits of the village, because there is a geographic identifier tied to the responses. We've only looked at it. We haven't tried to do anything with it yet, but it does come to the map, so allow us to export back out those answers. Probably. Seems like it's important.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we give Benchmark Properties the authorization to go ahead and file and analyze and present the survey data from the regarding the comprehensive plan. That costs not to exceed $5,000.
And where are we pulling these funds from, Cheryl?
I think from the planner salary to the benchmark services.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
Timeline?
How long might it take you?
How long? I think it'll take, once we can get to it, probably about a week and a half to go through it. Just the initial run, and then we'll take some time I'll take some time to go back through it after that. And
So January, February?
yeah, January. Yeah, we'll give it to you. Sure.
All right, all in favor? So that brings us to the CUP
You want to do it?
So I had a conversation with a lawyer in Charlotte who I've known for ages named Todd Ware, who represents currently someone who owns property that got notice of the zoning application or CUP application, and sent a letter outlining a number of objections to, I guess, what has happened thus far and whether or not the application complies with what's required under the ordinances. And I hadn't really had a chance to look at it fully, but one of the objections was that one of the notices that was mailed, not advertised, referenced planning board hearing this evening, referenced the time and the location correctly, but referenced planning board as opposed to a council hearing, and asked whether or not that would be grounds for a continuance or a rescheduling of the hearing from this evening to some other time. That pretty much sum it up without getting into the arguments that are in the letter. But
Just, the ordinance requires that the applicant for a conditional use permit for a cellular or wireless tower mail notice of the hearing to property owners within 300 feet within 14 days. They did. We have a notice here that got mailed. They sent on time. It did reference the correct date, time, location, etc. But the word planning board did not get changed to village council, and I spoke to the person who did the mailing today. It's probably in everyone's interest to have a properly notified meeting, regardless of how minor the defect may be in the notice. But I think that the applicant's here, and I don't know if they want to maybe any kind of statement on their behalf.
I think from a legal perspective, and George backed me up on this one way or the other, we have to make sure that everybody who has something that they want to say about this has the opportunity.
That's right.
that's the gist of it. Yeah, and Vaughn's right. I mean, there is a defect in the notice, and minor though it may be, there is a defect in the notice.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to speak?
Sure. My name is Ben Herrick, and I'm from Falk and Foster Real Estate, and HERRICK. And my colleague Jim LePan did the notice and the mailing. We feel like everybody got notice of the hearing. They got actual notice because they wrote a letter and called in to discuss. Their position is on the record by a letter. The publication was correctly done, and the website was correctly posted. So they had. We're comfortable either way. If the council decides that tabling is the right way to go, we'll come back and table. But I don't feel like the defect of the notice is grounds to would be legal grounds to overturn a decision. So, but obviously we will. We're at the will of the council.
Well, my concern is this: you might have one person who wants to speak on this today, but there might be more people out there that haven't had the opportunity. And I'm just worried that if we vote on this too soon, and then I find out later that somebody said, "Well, I didn't get a chance to say my piece." That's when we're all going to feel bad.
I understand. And do we know how many people were within 300 feet of the parcel? So it's not a huge number of people affected.
Jim,
17.
17.
So what is the fix for this? To reissue the notification corrected?
so the mailed notice definitely has to go out again if we're doing another hearing date. I don't think you can really open the hearing.
I think that's right.
Since it wasn't properly noticed, which means we would also need to re-advertise the paper as well.
I think you need to make a decision about rescheduling it and for when, and then then the notices would go out.
Is 30 days enough, or do we need?
I think they're ready to go. I mean, the requirement is really, it's statutory, and so it's no more than 10, or at least 10 and no more than 25 days prior to the hearing. And so we had the newspaper ads go out a couple weeks ago, and they ran last week and week before. And we can easily do the same thing for your next meeting date. We just comply with statute.
So we just need a motion to postpone the public hearing for proper notification until the January council meeting.
That is desired.
One clarification on that. Since we do have this advertised as a public hearing this evening, will we have tonight's public hearing on this, or will we not? So we're just going to postpone tonight's public hearing on this issue.
You're going to reschedule a new hearing for whenever you choose to reschedule it for, and then.
I do think there was somebody here specifically to speak on this. And is rescheduling fair to them?
Well, there's no, again, I don't think you can open it, so then there'd be no evidence to be offered as part of the hearing. So I think your only choice is to either the only choices are either to open it and hold it in its entirety, or not open it and reschedule it. Unless Vaughn tells me otherwise.
Probably not the best idea, but to open it, do most of it, re-advertise it, and allow, not close it, but just continue it. But the problem is we still need to re-advertise for the next one, because the defect is probably because the council and the planning board have different roles in this substantive event.
And sorry guys, I know you're ready, but we're going to the public. So I would like to make a motion, we postpone the public hearing until our January council meeting, which is
January 11th at 7?
at 7 p.m.
Can you add the stipulation that the applicant fix and reissue all of the
With proper notice to residents as required by the statute.
Right. I'll second that.
Yes, sir?
I mean, we wouldn't be opposed if you wanted to hear from whoever was here tonight.
I think we can.
I mean,
Because it's quasi-judicial, I don't think we can until the public hearing.
You wouldn't be able to take it in.
I mean, it wouldn't have an official evidentiary weight, but I mean, if you wanted to hear them out, we wouldn't be opposed to that.
I would suggest probably not doing that, but there's nothing that prevents y'all from talking outside of this.
Okay.
I think just with it being quasi-judicial, it's better to just wait until.
Fair enough. Thank you.
One question. What impact does this have on the public information meeting that they had with the planning board? We don't need to go through that process again, I'm sure, but is there a gap? Is there a gap between the time that the public information meeting was held and the time that the council hears it? No.
The requirement is that statute requires that for a wireless telecommunication that it be reasonable, based and not different than other types of application of similar nature. You have afforded a similar type of process for wireless telecommunication towers. So that's.
And there haven't been any changes to the plan?
We made changes that the planning board recommended.
Okay.
So, but they weren't material changes.
So they would be presenting to you any changes that were. They will present to you any changes that have been made at your
So TBD, right? January.
So, did we vote on that?
Call
All in favor?
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'll see all that in January.
Yep.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
And so that will scratch us all the way down to the public hearing on subdivision ordinance amendment to replace section 155-075, retention of existing vegetation, with a new section, tree conservation subdivisions and revised definitions of 155.010. So open the public hearing. Do you want to speak first?
Probably better. Our planning board chairman might have anything to say about this. Did you want to say anything about the subdivision order or the tree stuff, or not? I do not. Okay. All right. So, I came in maybe a little bit in the middle towards the end of the planning board working on making updates to the tree ordinance, the commonly known as the retention of existing vegetation in the subdivision ordinance that's currently formed. And I guess over a period of maybe 3 meetings with them, they had Bill Smith, the urban forester, for Union County advising them, and Deb was working with him closely on preparing these ordinance amendments. And the planning board deliberated extensively on this, and we made a number of changes going through the ordinances. Basically coming to the conclusion that having a more consistent requirement for the amount of vegetation to be retained and planted in terms of the area of the site was preferable to the current way that the ordinance does it on somewhat of a sliding scale based on how many trees are currently on the site or were there within the last 5 years, which can be not subjective necessarily, but it provides a different set of outcomes between this subdivision, 100 acres here beside this other 100 acres beside it. And so you're getting essentially unequal outcomes while you have a stated goal of preserving a large number of trees in conjunction with development. And we narrowed it back down to being applicable to major subdivisions only. We talked about the pros and cons of applying it to different types of other just general land development activity within the village. And an argument in terms of using it for major subdivisions is that once somebody has, say, a 3-acre parcel of land that's been subdivided off of a larger 50-acre piece for the last 50 years, is the consideration of preserving an area of trees on that site wasn't really taken into account when the farmer originally sold it off to a guy that might have invested in it and holding it for development in the future. And so it's really applying this to major residential subdivisions, anything that would fall within that statutory or ordinance definition of major subdivision. So think of somebody coming in to build a 20-lot subdivision or a 50-lot subdivision. They would be required to preserve 30% of the site as basically open space for trees, and they would either be places where there are existing trees, or they would have to plant a number of trees to satisfy those requirements. Other notable changes, I think we beefed up some of the tree protection standards for during construction activity when that's going on, a little bit more definition to that, and how these existing areas of trees are being preserved. The diameter for heritage trees was increased from 15-inch DBH to 20 inches to lessen the burden to a certain extent on developers not having to identify and locate and preserve so many of these trees, while at the same time expanding the overall amount of area that was going to have to be preserved. So in 20, 30 years down the road, you would end up with more larger trees down the road instead of more larger trees, or maybe even smaller number of larger trees. In the drafts of the ordinance that were presented by Deb that she worked on the bill, the planning board, there were some provisions that I thought was more appropriate zoning ordinance or needed repeating in the zoning ordinance, at least similarity between subdivision zoning. One, for instance, street trees. There's provision in the zoning ordinance now for street trees, and there was a provision proposed for how street trees would be treated in the subdivision ordinance. So one of the changes to the zoning ordinance, which is a separate amendment, would be to have that being the same between them. Another one is they were advancing an idea of requiring the planting or preservation of trees both within and around the edges of parking lots, which is a sort of requirement right now on the edges for screening, but there's no real 100% requirement that you have trees planted within the asphalt area parking lot. Just noting on the Carolina Pets when I was reviewing it last week that their parking lot does not have any trees within it. And so this would change the zoning ordinance would then require that. And then adding in definitions that are identical between the zoning and subdivision ordinance. So since the zoning and subdivision ordinance often work in tandem with each other, making sure that there's no conflict, there's little conflict as possible between them in the end. I think, and Cheryl, did you get a comment from anybody about the ordinance?
No.
Somebody.
I don't think so.
I will just note further, I did speak with somebody who represents property that has an active or pending case for subdivision with us. And one of the points they brought up, you may want to address or not this evening, is that the list of people who come up with the tree preservation plan is somewhat exclusive because most of the focus on people with arborists, but did not include
Oh,
landscape
that was
architects.
right. That was one. Yeah.
What?
It focused on arborists or forestry management professionals, but did not include landscape architects. And I think he's probably being reasonable in that landscape architects have a similar type of training to those other professionals, at least in working in terms of the outcome of the process in terms of tree management on a site. And so his suggestion, which you can consider or not, it's up to you, would be to allow landscape architects to be one of those professionals who is permitted to work on the tree preservation plan. Bring that specific.
And if we allow that, where would that be given?
It's on the second page, up near the top D. Section D.
So section 155,
Mm-hmm.
075?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the Epcot property line?
Excuse me?
What happened to the Epcot?
No. Not that I know of. It's a Jonathan Crowder with Merrick. I don't think they're working on it. We haven't seen, well, we've kind of seen it, but we haven't really seen it.
If this passes, we're going to affect tonight, so that would impact Carolina Pet.
Will it impact who?
Carolina Pet, so I have to add.
It would not. They have a vested right based on their approved conditional zoning for that site. They've already submitted their application. And so nothing would change with respect to them, but any subsequent applications, even really the McCoy Farm, they have not applied for their major subdivision yet, and so among things they were holding off on, I think, was this in particular. And I don't think they submitted the application for the major subdivision yet. Because they don't have a complete application in.
So it will impact their other projects.
But I would say that this narrowly makes it easier on the developer, but not harder.
I think it's going to make it more clear on everyone. I think that there are some potential economic issues regarding. Everybody's going to have a different piece of land, and if you have a piece of land that maybe has more marginal land on it that's been remained wooded over the years, you might be in a better position than someone that is buying a piece of very prime, high agricultural land, because you're going to be having to take really developable land and leaving it for the trees, which is great. Trees are great. And that's one of the things I think will probably need to be discussed at some point in the future is whether the conservation subdivision provisions, because this basically goes 3 times beyond the conservation subdivision. So we're mandating conservation subdivision now.
I just have flashbacks to when we approved Epcot's property on Comforts Road, and to meet our ordinances at the time, they had to pay $400,000 for the trees to mitigate what they cut down, and even the landscape architect said, yeah, I can do it, but they'll not survive.
There will not, that's, the way that I am interpreting this current ordinance is that there will not be the same burden about clearing land. Because if you're going to build something, you're going to be clearing land no matter what. And so if you the end state of minimum of 30% wooded or planted area on the site is the end state we're looking for, not, you should cut down any trees to be able to develop the site.
Well, I know everybody worked hard on this, I'm ready to see it in action.
The only question I have, before you send all those questions
Yes.
to you, the only question you said during the maintenance,
Yes.
so if we create the 12-month period, you said it might be a good idea for us to at least administratively determine, that's something we do in-house, or that's something we need to put in order?
With regard to
With regard to a longer period of time for holding on to the completion guarantee for street trees to ensure liability in the long term. It's like the third question she had for under maintenance. You said it may be a good idea for us to at least administratively determine some longer period of time. So I didn't know, is it stay 12 months or that's something we just do in-house?
Yeah, so I think the issue there, so we can't require any kind of maintenance guarantee in terms of funds for subdivision related activity. Once the final has been approved, then we basically accept the improvements in place as they are. What we can do is have a longer completion time for them, and I think that's something that we would do administratively, and say that your trees need to reach viability, and work with the developer and if we want to hire an arborist to advise on the process as well, we can do that. But to say that we need X number of years based on the type of tree to determine that they are complete, just like a street, right? They can get the final plat approved, but we've got money for the completion of the streets. It would be kind of the same thing with the trees. We would not be maintaining them or asserting that we're maintaining them, but we would not decide that they're complete or installed fully until such time they reach some maturity beyond just being in the ground. Kind of like how Bonnie determines whether a street's done, we would determine if the trees were in.
Maybe Aaron Forrester can help us with that.
If there's another one at some point.
He's retiring at the end of the month. But,
Well, we're paying for one.
so how long would that be? I mean, the developer's not going to sit around and wait for the trees to grow. They're going to finish their development and be done.
Theoretically, if the developer did not want to remain around anymore, they could assign the bond to the HOA. Theoretically. And so the HOA, part of the HOA, they would put it into the price of the house, and they would that's what offers. From that, I don't anticipate it would be, significant. It might be. I don't know what the cost of a street tree is necessarily. I think the assumption would be that some, small percentage of them will probably die during that time. That's what happens with street trees. But there's some other issues with street trees in general that you may have dealt with before, may not. Just trees being within DOT right of way, and maintenance of them, or if something happens to them, how do you really compel somebody to reinstall them? We can, just administratively maybe work that into how we require that the operation and maintenance agreements for the trees as a whole on the site are drafted. I think getting into too many details on that might be. We can. It'll probably take a couple times because I haven't unfortunately been able to involve myself too much with the EFCON issue. I know that Bill did go out there and look at street trees, among other things, on the site when he was doing his assessments over there.
So, any more comments for our open public hearing? All right. So I will open the public hearing for.
Wait, first you close the old public hearing?
I didn't open it
Yeah, we
yet.
didn't open
Oh. Okay.
Not that anyone wanted to talk first.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'll open the public hearing on subdivision ordinance amendment to replace section 155-075 retention of existing vegetation with the new section tree conservation for subdivisions and revise the definitions at 155. Do you have any speakers? be two motions?
They're different sections.
Yep.
Okay. And the zoning, no, the subdivision ordinance is the one that would be modified to add landscape architect.
That would be the one we would alter or make further amendment to section 155.075 E D. I'm sorry, E1D. E1.
John, as a planning board member, director, you got any issue with this adding landscape architects?
No.
All right, and Deb gave a motion with the, and it was more of a consistent.
Well, this is the subdivision ordinance. You don't have to do it for that, do you? Isn't it only for the zoning ordinance? The statements?
Is reasonableness and consistency for both or for one?
That would be just for the zoning.
Yeah, so you're okay.
So that this, you're on the subdivision now, right?
Mhm.
That way.
We'll do that
Yes.
first, yes. Sir.
Mhm.
Yep.
All right, so I just need a motion perhaps to consider approval of ordinance 2020-09, amending section 155-075E1D to include landscape architect.
So motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Which brings us to the,
We don't need to vote on all of it.
we just did subdivision, we're now going to do zoning.
Okay.
All right, so now we need to vote on ordinance 2020-10 to amend the zoning ordinance. When we need a statement of reasonableness and consistency. Deb did one. I think it's just consistency though, but reasonableness could be that this amended tree ordinance is consistent with Wesley Chapel's value of people wanting to protect our rural character.
I wrote something you'd like me to
You
read.
did? Okay, yes.
Even better.
This is for the statement of reasonableness and being in the public interest. So,
Okay.
what you may adopt, and get Cheryl, I think Cheryl has the text of this, that the proposed amendment is both reasonable and in the public interest since it standardizes the requirements for street trees and certain definitions related to vegetation between the subdivision and zoning ordinances, and introduces a new requirement to mitigate the impact of paved parking on the environment and the aesthetics of the village's non-residential areas. Specifically, the requirement for preservation and planting of trees both within and around the perimeter parking areas will help to reduce the heat island effect caused by unshaded asphalt on screen parking areas of public rights of way and adjacent properties.
So that's reasonable?
That is the statement of reasonableness and public interest. And so I think Deb's consistency statement spoke to
Okay.
the village's plan.
All right. So to read the consistency one is that this new tree conservation ordinance, this amended tree conservation ordinance is consistent with the village's future land use plan as it addresses protection of existing trees in the village of Wesley Chapel within subdivisions in a way that would reduce the chance that trees in a retention area would be removed unknowingly and as it protects overall property owner rights to remove trees on individual lots. So I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-10 to amend our zoning ordinance with Vaughn's statement of reasonableness and the consistency statement I read.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. That moves us to our Parks and Rec report.
Well, the good news, I think everybody knows already, the certificate of occupancy for the park was issued. Long last, having met all the requirements of the county and council's criteria for posting COVID notification and installing hand sanitizer facilities at the playground, all that was in place. So within 30 minutes of getting the certificate of occupancy, we opened the park. It has been received amazingly well. I've never seen the park so busy. The feedback is all very, very positive. Yeah.
We're running out of parking spaces.
Well, I know.
We literally, every time I've been in there, since part of the playground's been open, we're at like 80 or 90% capacity on parking, and it's only been open a week.
Yep, it's great. The park is being used for what we would, the community is enjoying our park.
The problem is, John, when are we getting more people to find out about it? Where are we going to put them all?
There's no parking, they'll have to come back at a different time.
Do we have any kind of expansion program for parking?
We've got the overflow parking area that we don't typically use. We could direct people to that, or they're going to have to park at Southbrook and cross the road.
It's crazy.
So it's being very, very well received. So, in addition to the parking issue, thing that has been noted is that 4 benches in the play area does not appear to be enough. And we've had some discussion one-on-one around the Parks and Rec Committee, and that it appears now with the COVID situation more unlikely that we're going to hold any events anytime soon. So we'd like council to consider the possibility of once again moving some money from events to the playground for us to buy 3 additional benches and a picnic table.
What do you place outside of that?
2 of the benches would go inside where people have said, hey, there's no benches close to the small kiddie playground area, so we put some there. 1 next to the small kiddie swing, we've got 1 next to the big kiddie swing, and 1 would go outside, and that relates to what we'll talk about later, park rules, where unanimously Parks and Rec doesn't think we should allow dogs within the playground area because of feces, urine, digging up the mulch, and possibly, some action of a dog against the kid. So the thought was if we placed a bench outside the gate, that would afford somebody the opportunity to sit there with the dog while the kids went to the playground. So we'd like council to consider allowing the movement of up to $5,000 from the events budget to the playground capital budget to buy 3 additional benches and an in-ground mounted picnic table, so that there's no opportunity for anybody to move that picnic table anywhere near the swings or in the slide runoff area where you're not supposed to have anything. The other thing that's come up, I've had a complaint that when the playground is very busy, there is a challenge in adults maintaining their social distancing at 6 feet. We have plenty of signage up asking people to stay 6 feet apart. However, some people feel it's just impossible at some point, and can you just please ask people to wear masks? So what we're suggesting is that we don't mandate masks because the guidelines from the state don't require masks outside. You're supposed to social distance. So the thought was we just post some signage on the notice board, please, consider wearing a mask. A request rather than a mandate. I'm just asking if council would be okay with that.
I thought the outside room government requirement was if you can't social distance, you have to wear a mask.
It is now.
So
I've been discussing it with Amy and Cheryl indirectly. We think we'll just make some sign-ups saying please wear a mask if you're unable to social distance and post it on the notice board outside the playground. And maybe on a few places we'll just make the sign ourselves, laminate it, punch holes in it, mount a few on the fence around the inside and mount one on the notice board. And then that should deal with the complaint we've had. I'd hate to see, grandma and granddad go there with the kid and be concerned about not being able to social distance and deny the kid the opportunity to play in the playground. So I think, obviously we can't enforce it, but we should at least ask people to consider wearing a mask if you guys are all okay with it. I'm getting a nod of heads, is that? Yeah? Okay. Alright, we'll go ahead and do that.
What about the dog stuff? Are you gonna have a separate set of rules in the information board just for
So So my next item was playground rules. Parks and Rec has discussed them. I talked about the dog rule already. Amy did some research, and I don't know if that list of potential rules got to you guys for consideration. No.
Well, I wanted us to talk about that tonight.
Okay.
So,
The other one Parks and Rec thought of would be a good idea is perhaps no glass within the playground area.
nothing.
Another, please close the gate upon entry and exit so that the toddlers don't run off.
Our regular rules already say no glass.
Sorry, sir.
The park rules already say no glass.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was one thing that came up when looking at Amy's group, and I just wanted to read them out loud and go through them, was that all park rules apply. So which ones do we want to restate? And I think we also should say all park rules apply at the top.
Right, which is the no tobacco.
But which ones do we also, and I had a couple questions for George on what we can and cannot require. So y'all ready? Are you ready for this point?
Yeah.
But before we do this, I would like to make a motion that we move $5,000 from park events into
Playground, the playground.
Last time we used benches. Benches account.
3 benches, 1 picnic table.
On the contingency, didn't we only spend 8,000 of the 10,000 contingency?
We didn't spend any contingency that I'm aware of. We
Well,
moved
how did we pay for the last set of benches?
from events.
From events, we didn't use any contingency.
No.
the motion.
John, okay with the benches, where are you going to put the picnic table?
In the spot between the carousel and the small, where there's that V-shaped spot in front of the magnolia.
Okay, from the magnolia tree, okay. And I like the fact that it's going to be sunk in because it'll get moved if you
Oh,
don't.
I know. I think down the road when we buy more picnic benches, we should concrete them all in because they get moved around all the time. And then you or I ended up having to move those heavy things back.
Can we also move maybe one of those handicap picnic tables to just outside the fence, where kids can, where parents can sit there and watch their kids? You know, between the fire pit and the fence, somewhere in there.
We can move one of the existing ones in.
Yeah.
If you're only going to have one table, it better be handicapped, I would think.
Inside the fence, it needs to be ordered handicap accessible.
I believe we can.
So I have a motion, is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
I'm glad that that's in my
Okay, and that was to move the money. Now, usually we have to get 3 bids and all that stuff. Do you want to do that, or do you want
Can we
to?
just order the benches to match what we already have?
Okay, if you make the motion.
Last
So I'd
time we
like
had
to make
trouble.
the motion that we order the benches and tables to match what we have.
How many, you put a number on that, like 1 table and 4 benches, or?
It was
3 benches, sorry, 3 benches and 1 picnic table is what.
And the picnic table being handicap, that's the one.
Yep.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, I feel the fact that it's one, and I love that we're going tomorrow also, so.
John, I have a question on the gate. Was the gate supposed to originally be designed to be self-closing?
No.
It was never supposed to be self-closing.
So the gate, we still have a punch list in the playground. One is the gate. I know you adjusted it, Mike, but I'm still not happy with it. We did have a plan for the contractor to come out and address the gate. You made some adjustments. I checked it again yesterday. It slipped again. So the contractor, the main contractor has not paid his fence subcontractor until he comes out and fixes that gate. And then we're waiting on the owner's kit. Supplied with the playground was an owner's kit that contained touch-up spray paint, the special tools you need to tighten the bolts and do the bolts, some spare bolts, graffiti remover. It said on the box, owner's kit do not open, and the installation contractor opened the kit and used it.
Yeah.
So I've told them, you need to get us a new one. They've agreed they need to supply us a new one. They're going to mail it here to the town hall. I checked this morning, it has not arrived yet, but let's not pay them until they fix the gate properly and we get the owners.
John, the other thing, we had the one outstanding issue, which is why we couldn't get the certificate of occupancy. How did they fix that?
What?
What was the one outstanding issue? Something about an engineering drawing?
Yeah. They needed a professional engineer to review the installation, the manufacturer of the equipment, and they were able, from the data I have on how thick the layer is, they know how long the pole was when it left the factory, so they know exactly how deep that pole goes into the concrete. And the equipment manufacturer certified that it had been installed per their engineering drawings. And because an anonymous call was made to the county complaining about the footings, the county wouldn't accept that. So the contractor had to spend some money to get a professional engineer to certify that the installation was compliant with all engineering standards, which they did. Now they came to us initially saying, hey, this is $1,000 worth of expense we did not factor. We told them, well, you got to do it. And they went ahead and did it and got us the CO. They come back now and say, hey, you know, this was a $1,000 expense that we didn't plan on. How about you waive the $270 on the grass seed and straw, and we call it quits. So,
Well, we still have a bit of landscaper for that, didn't we?
so what we said is we were not happy. They apparently ran out of seed and straw when they were reseeding the disturbed areas, and there were some patches not done. So I said, hey, you need to come back and finish this. And I asked our own landscape maintenance people, hey, if they don't come back and finish this, how much would it cost to finish this up? And they reseeded the areas the contractor already did. He said he could do it for $270. So I put that to the contractor, and the contractor said, you know what, go ahead, have your guy do it, which I actually prefer because now I got the guy who's going to be there every week looking after that grass or responsible for that grass. And they said, just deduct it from our final invoice. But since he's now had the expense of a professional engineer, he's saying, look, he just paid the invoice in full and waived that $270, so putting that to you guys. Personally, I think it's a reasonable request.
We already paid the landscaper, the $270.
Yeah, with the understanding that we were going to pay that $270 by deducting it from the final invoice on the playground, because he was obligated to do that seeding anyway. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know what you're saying, but he was also obligated to give us all the required information to pass the inspection.
Yeah, I know.
And if that engineered letter was part of that, then that would be on him, not me.
Ordinarily, that engineering letter would not be required, but he received a call from somebody. The building inspector received a call from somebody.
I think it's irrelevant how the question was raised.
Okay.
There was a question later, and again, I think it falls back to the contractor to make sure that we pass inspections.
And it has, and I'm fine with telling him no. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just conveying what the contractor has proposed.
And John, the final question I have is, what do we do with warranties? The Carolina Recreation has now been sold to another company. Who is honoring the warranty? Besides the equipment is warranted by the manufacturer.
Correct.
But everything else, who is that warranty by? The original owner or the new owner? Or has that been clarified?
It's by Carolina Recreation LLC, which is a legal entity. It's not down to a single person. Usually in an M&A activity, along with assets and receivables and goodwill, also come obligations and liabilities. It's all part and maybe George can comment there, but our warranty is from the legal entity, the company, not any individual.
I mean, for example, we had a problem with the fence a year from now, and we went back to Carolina Recreation and said we have a problem with the fence. They're going to say, well, that wasn't us, that was the previous owner, or...
Carolina LLC is Carolina LLC.
Okay.
And the current, they have been acquired but the past owner is staying involved in the business. He is not left that business.
But is the corporate changed, and do I make the final payment to the original corporate, or is there?
I don't know anything about the deal, so I don't know
Yeah,
whether
I don't
they
know
bought
either.
the stock or they sold the assets or.
Yeah, I don't think we know. Yeah.
Contract.
I wouldn't
I don't
pay it.
think
I
they
wouldn't
don't
pay it
have-
to anybody other than who's on your contract.
We've already made, what, 3 out of the 4 payments?
Yep,
So we're just holding off for the last final payment.
yep.
So,
So Mike, what are your thoughts on the 270? David says no, what do you say?
The other thing is, that I don't think, even though our landscaper did the seeding, I don't think he aerated. He just put seed down and straw down. He didn't aerate into the ground. How much of that seed's going to take?
But it's already germinating. I was there yesterday, and the grass is coming up. It's green already.
The way we were treated by Carolina Recreation, I just say,
Fine.
if they wanted to pass the buck to the landscaper, let them pass the buck to the landscaper, but they still pay the.
All right, so we'll deduct the 270 from their final invoice and pay the rest.
Once you're happy
Once
with
they've
that.
done the fence and provided the owner's kit.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you want to go over the rules, Amanda,
Yes.
before I move on?
Yeah, okay. So it says at the top, playground rules, please comply with the following rules to avoid causing injury to yourself and others. The playground is open daily from dawn to dusk. I think we should also say all dog park rules apply, or something like that.
Do we even need that, since that's an obvious rule of the whole
Put
park?
it at the bottom, it says, plus all the other, list all your playground rules, and then at the bottom, put plus all the other standard rules for the park.
Okay. And this is the first one. I immediately have questions for George, because how are we going to enforce these? And other than call the deputy, it's really hard on me. But children must be supervised at all times. The Village of Westlake Chapel is not responsible for accidents or injuries. Adults, or those over a certain age, who are not accompanying a child are not permitted, or who are not supervising a child are not permitted. Can we say that? Can we say...
Yeah, I think you can. I actually looked at that a little bit. I think you can. I mean, the problem would be if you selectively enforced it. I mean, it's not ironclad that you can have that kind of rule, but it definitely could be a problem if you selectively enforced it.
I like the adult supervision rule, because I've already seen kids in there on their own with the adults sitting way remote and not even keeping an eye on the kids. Not that we can enforce it, but if a kid falls off the thing, can we refer back to the sign and say, hey, you left the kid in there alone, you weren't supposed to?
Yeah, you certainly can. Whether or not it would have any kind of ultimate legal effect in a dispute about the injury, I don't know. But I mean,
How would we
it
even
wouldn't,
know?
Wouldn't hurt.
So, I like that children must be supervised at all times. The Village of Weston Chapel is not responsible for accidents or injuries. But I don't, what are your thoughts on the adults or who are not supervising a child are not permitted?
Well, I know Peggy Jennings was in there on the carousel one afternoon before the playground was officially open. Saw her in there swinging on it. I'm thinking, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't be able to go in there and swing on the swings. And she's like 75 years old. So,
And I mean, if there was a creeper in there, I guess I'd probably call the deputy anyway. Like if I was uncomfortable about an adult. But I don't know, what do y'all think? Scratch that?
I'd scratch it. I've seen, like I said, I've seen senior citizens in there trying to swing on the swings. And
So the next one, pets are not permitted inside the playground. Please restrain your pet outside the fence if necessary. I don't like that. I like that pets are not permitted, but I just stood outside with my dog. I'm not going to tie it down. That
I don't want to see
restraining your
dogs
pet outside the fence bothers me a little bit. So
I mean, just
pets are not permitted.
Pets are not permitted.
Inside the playground fence.
Pets are not permitted inside the fenced area of the playground. And then as far as what you do with them, well,
You stand there on them. And I saw several, I wasn't the only parent doing that, standing out that right at the fence. No glass items allowed inside the playground. It's a regular park rule, but that might be one we're restating. Use the equipment only for its intended purpose.
I think that goes without saying, but you want to stick it in there?
Well, these are just ones that we came up with, so I'm asking now, is it necessary?
So Parks and Rec, they have not seen this rule yet?
They gave us a list of something, or they have something they want to see included.
When did Park and Rec look at it? At the rules?
At the rules.
My impression was that they had missed, didn't they not have a meeting in
No.
November?
I solicited thoughts by email, and then people send me suggestions.
It really should be done in an open meeting.
So does your committee bless the rules?
No, the only ones we discussed, I asked them for suggestions. The ones that came back were no dogs and the no glass
Okay.
and adult supervision. All these came from Amy. Amy was tasked with researching what other parks do, what other parks rules have for playgrounds.
I would suggest that these go to Parks and Rec. You guys put together a final draft and then bring it to us.
I'm fine with that. I wanted to get, since the park is getting, the playground is getting so much use, I wanted to post something sooner rather than later. We're not going to have a meeting until January, so I really wanted to get some kind of temporary rules up.
You want to put some interim rules and just print them out on a regular piece of paper? And
Exactly, that's what I was looking for now, and then we finally review and print properly and put them up on the notes board.
Yeah, I'm fine
If
with
you want to hold in putting up any rules between now and after the next,
I think it would behoove us to cover our backsides to put at least some temporary rules up, even if they're in the interim.
that's what I was thinking.
So you want me to just work with John on this list?
Yeah, they're all pretty common sense things. And you're law, I would respect your opinion more than anybody else's.
We can do that. And then Parks and Rec can review
At the next, we'll have it on the agenda for the next Parks and Rec meeting then. Okay,
all right, we can do that.
all right.
Question, do we need to make a motion for the final payment, or is that going to happen once the punch list is finished?
Well, I believe it's a contractual obligation when we sign the contract.
You don't need a motion for that, Cheryl?
I don't think so. I have not paid anybody because I have not heard that we're ready to pay anybody yet.
Right, move on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we had an issue with the fountain. It was surging. There was a bunch of vegetation growing on the fountain. Apparently what was happening, the roots were getting sucked up into the pump. It was stopping the pump. And then the backflow washed the roots out. And then the pump started back up and it sucked the roots back in.
We haven't had that thing on the water in 2 years.
It was in jeopardy of damaging the pump motor, which is an expensive piece. So we got somebody out to come and clean it up. What was discovered is muskrats have built a den on top of the fountain. It's a perfect place. And they said it's just going to happen again unless you get the muskrat issue taken care of. So Cheryl was kind enough to do some research.
How do you get muskrats out in the middle of a pond? They swim?
Oh yeah. And Cheryl researched, and we found a number of people who were licensed by the state to deal with muskrat issues. And I was at the park with the guy recently, and he said we got quite a big issue with muskrats, and it's going to get taken care of. He said since there is a pond upstream on a neighbouring property, it will not be a permanent fix because they're going to come back. They'll run off up there and then they'll come back. So he said maybe annually you've got to think about some kind of muskrat control. Otherwise this problem with the fountain is just going to keep happening. So,
Up by the shipping container, we have a problem with either a mole or gopher.
no, I don't know.
Next time you're up there by that pile of bricks, look around and see where something's buried through the ground.
In walking the park to look at the muskrat issue with the trapper, we observed a dead deer floating in the pond. Somebody shot her in the side with a large boat. she'd been shot in the side and she was floating in the pond. So I asked the muskrat guy if he could do it. He said, he doesn't deal with that. So Cheryl found us somebody to deal with that. So the dead doe has now been removed from the pond. I did not want to leave it in there rotting.
We got it out within about 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone.
Dare I ask what that cost?
$200.
Worth it?
Yeah, the muskrat guy's suggestion was get a grappling hook and a rope and just drag it to the bank and the coyotes will eat it and the buzzards. I was like, no, I don't want to leave it there that long, so it's been taken care of. Alright, so the one other small thing before I get to the big thing we talked about. We've had several people, Elaine Rossoff, Weddington Garden Club and myself, donate a rather large number of bulbs, spring bulbs, so we're going to have a spectacular colour display around the park, various locations. I've been out there planting all those things, and I think that kind of activity is going to continue. People are going to keep donating that kind of stuff, and we'll just plant it in the beds that have been created. We focused on the area around the playground, so that's going to be really beautiful in the spring, I hope. Alright, the main thing we talked about at the last P&R meeting was related to Laurie's request that she'd like to have a long-term view of what the expenses would be for the park, what the long-term plan is. So what we did, we took a very large list of items, both from the original CUP permit. So those are big ticket items like picnic shelters, and then we added to that all the things that had been suggested as we've learned things since we opened the park. So we developed this long list, not in any particular order, with some estimate of what each of those would cost, and we discussed in P&R Parks and Rec for a long time about what we think the priorities should be. I'm not going to go into detail of each individual item tonight. You'll get the list once we sign off on it. But the consensus was, number one, we fix what we already got. So that's like the landscaping behind the stage, landscaping in the parking lot, the buffer landscaping between the homes and the parking lot. But before we do that, we need to get irrigation water up there from the current irrigation system to make sure they survive when we're planting this time. It was things like water supply to the dog park we thought should be a higher priority. Having a maintenance person rather than a contractor was a higher priority than some of the other things. So we got everybody's input. I'm going to reorder the list in the order of priority that Parks and Rec are suggesting, and we're going to submit that to Council after we sign off on our next Parks and Rec meeting and say, here's what the plan looks like for the next 5 years. And we're going to try and give you some indication which budget year we think those things would occur. And then hopefully everybody on council is then comfortable with, the path forward for the park. And that's about it. So, anything else?
Yes, sir. For you people in the public, I worked really tirelessly on the playground project, so we would like to present him with a certificate of appreciation to recognize his public service to the citizens of the village of Wesley Chapel for his work on the Parks and Rec Committee and the playground. And just thank you very much, John, for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Brings us to item number 12, discussion and changes to the operating procedures due to the pandemic. Go with the flow, what we're doing now.
Unless there's any obstacles that we see coming our way.
Cooper shut some more things down. I think we're fine like we are right now. Get Consider requesting a collection box from the U.S. Postal Service. Cheryl, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, sure. Actually, somebody from Park and Rec had suggested to me that would be something that a lot of people would like, and I think it would be something people would appreciate from requests I've had over the years. I don't know if we have a good chance or no chance. You know, it could be at the shopping center. It could be at town hall. I don't know.
So those blue box. I think it's a great idea. So you can drive the box online and
I've seen them free on Craigslist, and some guy will have 30 or 40 of them. Just anybody wants to buy one, turn it into a craft project. You know,
You mean the big blue box?
big blue boxes are.
That's federal property, I would think.
I saw a guy on Craigslist had like 30 of them, was trying to give them away.
Sold on anonymous.
Well, I mean, you know, we would have to ask them because we would want them to collect from it also.
Yeah, you don't want to just put stuff in it. And
Put your letters to Santa here.
Well, 10 years ago.
Alright, so is everybody cool if we just look into that and see what happens?
yeah, see if one of them do it, and then the follow-up question will be is where to put it, if they approve it.
The next item is we don't have to have a motion for that, right? Okay. The Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program. So Patrick Malley reached out to me about the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program. It's basically a program where the county gets funds from HUD annually, and then they give those funds out to provide housing, suitable living environments, expanded economic opportunities, primarily for the benefit of low and moderate income people. They frequently ask towns to participate regularly. You apply and you qualify to become a member, and you have to reapply every 3 years. And they want everybody to participate because the more people they have, you know, the more competitive they are. And Patrick sent me, we talked about two different things, like, you know, maybe writing a letter of support for the program, or actually becoming a member of the consortium. Right now it's Monroe, Marshall, South, Blacksall, Washington, and Wingate. I don't think we have to make a decision on this tonight. You have to apply in January. So I'm going to ask him, I'm going to forward this to you, and I'm going to ask him for some more information. And when I get that, I'll forward it to you, and we'll just talk about it in January.
But this is money, not we're spending money to them, they're giving money to us.
Yeah, and the only reason it kind of, I mean, we do not have very many low income families or properties in the area. But it kind of caught my eye with like some of our code enforcement issues, like if it could be done. And one of the things that can be used for is code enforcement. I guess cleaning up or fixing, but I don't know.
It's generally limited to projects that, if you have a house that does not meet minimum housing standards, for instance, and the person that owns the property it qualifies as low moderate income, then they may be able to apply on their own volition to, if the county directs some of its funding towards that, they would be able to apply to have those issues that contribute to the minimum housing violation fixed through the CDBG program.
Do you think this is worth us even applying?
In the off chance that there are some things that you might be able to get done in town, yes. I think it's probably going to, on the whole, benefit people outside of Wesley Chapel, just given your demographics, more than it will benefit people inside of Wesley Chapel. But the county's going to get the money one way or the other, and being part of having a chance to be at the table, makes the village more informed of what's going on and the opportunities if something were to come along. Because there's somebody out there within the corporate limits that can probably benefit from one of the programs that the county will have. So up to y'all, but it's not going to hurt anything.
Well, I'll forward y'all this information, and y'all can let me know. We are now going to go into closed session for NC Statute 143-318.11A6 to consider year-end bonuses. So we'll try to make it short, but I understand if y'all leave, it won't hurt my feelings.
Vaughn, will you still be here? We'll get back out.
How long are we going to do?
We're going to be
Couple minutes.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Who made the motion? And who seconded it? And who?
Oh, I made a motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Something like that, comments.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we come out of closed session.
Second.
All in favor? All right. And I just announced what we decided. Okay. This year we are.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You should make a motion out here to approve those bonuses. That's what you're asking, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we give our admin assistant a $100 bonus, our clerk and finance officer a $250 bonus, and the deputy a $100 bonus.
Second.
All in favor? Do I have to have another motion?
Yeah, budget transfer.
Yeah. And that I make a motion that we transfer these funds into.
From contingency to the appropriate accounts and add $50 for payroll tax.
So we have
In retirement.
specifically we have a line item for this, don't we?
No,
We cut it down.
not this year.
Because remember how tight that budget was?
Yeah, the question was whether we were going to cut to, we're going to be thrifty or cut to the bone. We cut to the bone.
Yeah. All right, so motion to move all that. One second.
Second.
All good.
Yes.
So council comment. Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, while Vaughn is still here, I've gotten a lot of people asking me over the last few weeks about 201 Central closing, and they're worried about what's going in there. We have no control if they decide to put like another retail shop in there. Is that correct? Unless they change their CDP?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that's substantially similar, I'm not familiar with all of the details of how that was approved, but I would imagine there was a broad enough range of uses permitted, especially for a building of that size, where they would have some flexibility as to what would go in there, even if maybe could even cut up into smaller spaces. We would know about that, and I can look and do some research to see if there's any big issues, but I haven't heard of anybody coming in there, and I don't know if the Harris Teeter folks have a lease that is ongoing there, and if they do, they're not inviting any similar businesses to come in.
Well, somebody said, I don't want to see a Dollar General going in Wesley Chapel. And I'm like, if it does, it does. There's nothing I can do about it.
They won't, as long as they have a lease, they're not going to, probably, they have plenty of money to pay. They don't need to get somebody in there to take a lease.
When Harris Teeter acquired it was all the Lowe's food stores, and they didn't need one across the street. And at the time, they were like, we'd rather just have it empty because we don't want to have a Food Lion or any other grocery store. At that time, it was a long-term lease. Now, I don't know. It's been a few years, so I don't know.
And I told a few residents that we couldn't call, but if they wanted to call around, they could, and no one's reported back. So.
The other question, and this came up earlier in tonight's meeting, if the urban forester is retiring at the end of the year, are we still paying their contract?
We pay once a year, and I presume they will get a new urban forester.
Okay. Do you know what the dollar amount is that we pay?
Yeah, it's a line item. I think it's about $3,700.
That's a good chunk of change.
It is a good chunk.
Would you look into that for us to find out if, by, let's say, the end of January, if they hire a replacement, and if not, when is that payment normally due?
We pay it back in July, so we're paid for this fiscal year. But keep in mind, for many years we did not participate in that contract, and if you do not want to participate in it next year, we should let them know.
Participating, provided they've got somebody to advise, but if, I don't want to just pay the contractor bill when he's sitting in that chair. So, I would just say keep your eyes open and bring back to council, let's say by the end of January, beginning of February, we're out on that. And the other question I had under council comments is any update with Jan?
The last I saw was that Karen Bridge post. I heard nothing.
Okay, because I'm not on social media, so I don't.
Well, it's just a website. You just create an account and you can read her update. And her update was about spending Thanksgiving with her family, and then right after Thanksgiving, her daughter got COVID. And I mean, I think so. Basically nobody comes to visit me, but I mean, I would imagine her immune system's pretty vulnerable, and and that she was a stage 4 pancreatic cancer patient. That was really all I took away from it.
Right.
But no, she hasn't called or messaged me or anything.
When we did the ribbon cutting, I saw the woman sitting in the chair type, all kind of masked up and wrapped in a blanket. I thought it was Jan. It was Julie Brown's phone. So I was like, oh, good, nice to see you. And I'm like, that's not Jan. So I just didn't know if there was any update from her.
No. I'll go next to council comments and say, I got a email from the art teacher with an email address I didn't know copied it, and it ended up being Jan's daughter. And they were inquiring about, how Jan planned the art show for last May, that obviously COVID killed school and they killed the art show. But they wanted to plan something to honor Jan. And I responded back that, we were really trying to limit people at town hall. In the middle of the pandemic, we can't really have an art show. We aren't really encouraging visitors because the pandemic. I told the art teacher we would talk. She's been supposed to call me a couple times and has not. But I said what really should happen is if there's something you want to do, this is what I'm going to tell her. If there's something you want to do, you need to make a presentation and you need to come to council and you need to present it. This is not something that I want to take ownership for or approve. If there's an idea that you have, you should flesh it out and come to council and we'll go from there. And I haven't heard from her to tell her that, but that's what I'm going to tell her.
I heard the art teacher via Zoom.
Well, she's busy all the time. When we're supposed to talk, she's had meetings or Zoom calls or so. So we'll see if anything comes of it, or if she gets pushed by Jan's daughter into emailing. I kind of wish Jan's daughter had called, or some sort of instead of getting an email directly from the art teacher. But here and there. Thank you, John, for our hard work at the park. Every time I'm there, you're there. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Vaughn, for all your hard work. George, for putting up with us. One day we'll get that code case finished. All I want for Christmas is no muskrats, no lawsuits, and to close that code case.
That's a pretty good wish list.
I've been a good girl a year ago, but we're going to get out of 2 meetings early. David?
You're taking for granted that my council comments are going to be an hour and a half long. The bill on your kudos also to the planning board for finally getting that tree ordinance put to us and passed. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's probably still something that we're going to have to massage, but I think it's a much, much more simpler approach, not only for us to govern, but also for the developers, for them to adhere to whenever they come to us for
6 years on that? I think 6 years from the time we started talking about it to today.
I believe it's been almost 6 years. Almost 6 years. And then kudos also to council and staff. I mean, this is my anniversary, my first year in, and for 2020 to have been as eventful of a year as it has been, I'm very happy to say that it's been a non-eventful year for us, and Wesley Chapel, as far as I'm concerned. We haven't had any major uh-ohs or any major hoopses, and hopefully we can carry that trend on into next year as well.
See rides in the street.
George, my
Yes,
quote, trust the process.
Ooh, I like
Who has said it lately?
Lots of people.
That's right.
Lots of people involved with things that were going on nationally. In the
That's
country.
right. Matt Rule is the one that I heard say it most recently, and that's what made me think of it. We have started the process of this comprehensive plan, and I think taking the steps tonight to release benchmark and move on into moving forward with that is a big step for us. But moving into next year, I would really like for us to continue that process. I mean, we can't trust the process until we have a plan, and this is our plan. I think we need to make an effort. I know it's going to be costly, I know it's going to be time consuming, but I think that's important for Wesley Chapel and for the residents we represent to make sure that we've got a plan ready to roll out as soon as possible.
You still have an hour and 20 minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in